I stumbled upon 3 terrifying dead of night horror stories and something followed me home. I never should have opened that door. The moment I did, a cold wave crashed over me like icy fingers gripping my spine. My heart raced. It was supposed to be a simple night of listening to urban legends, something fun to feed my curiosity. But this night was different. I could feel a heaviness in the air, thick and suffocating. Shadows danced on the walls, darting away from the flickering candlelight like frightened animals. I was alone in my dim apartment, the muffled sounds of the city drowned out the deeper loneliness in my chest. I wrapped my arms around myself, seeking warmth against the chill creeping in. My phone buzzed. I glanced down. Another notification from a channel I followed. 3 terrifying dead of night horror stories. My curiosity got the better of me. I hit play. The stories unfolded like nightmarish visions. The first story was about an old woman who never left her house. They called her the Whisperer. They said if you wandered too close, her whispers would curl around you, drawing you in until you couldn't escape. I felt my skin prickle. Then came the tale of a young girl, lost in the woods. They claimed she still searched for her mother in the dead of night. They warned that sometimes, she'd reach out to passing hikers only to lead them to her grave. I swallowed hard, my throat dry and tight. But the last story shattered my fragile calm. It told of a figure that stalked the outskirts of the town, seen only in moonlight, its eyes glowing like 2 coals of fire. They said it followed you home, feeding off fear and loneliness, turning your thoughts against you. I laughed nervously, the sound hollow in the dim light. But then I heard it. A soft, low whisper, barely above the hum of my own breath. My heart raced. It was too quiet. I strained to listen, the air felt alive. I shifted in my seat, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. But the shadows flickered again, and something in the room shifted, a cold draft or perhaps something more sinister. A noise came from the hallway, a shuffling sound that sent chills down my spine. My hands trembled as I fumbled for my phone, the screen illuminating my face with a ghastly glow. "Stop it," I whispered to myself. "It's just a story." The darkness seemed to lean closer, oddly welcoming. My instincts screamed at me to run. Yet I stayed frozen. The soft whispers grew louder now, echoing the chilling stories I'd just heard. I couldn't breathe. With heart pounding, I peeked through the door. Nothing. Just the narrow, shadowy corridor that loomed ahead. But something was off, an outline at the end, darker than the darkness around it. My breath caught in my throat. I took a step back, but my feet felt glued to the ground. The figure stirred. Anthena's scream erupted through the stillness. Not mine, something beyond my reach, echoing from another realm. My chest tightened with panic. I tried to step back, but the door slammed shut behind me, locking me in. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I jolted, feeling the weight of an unseen pressure build around me, filling the space with an unbearable dread. The air thickened, turning my pulse into a steady drumbeat of terror as the room flickered ominously. I had anticipated stories of the dreadful and the grotesque, but the reality of my surroundings twisted into something unrecognizable. "Let me out!" I screamed, slamming my palms against the door. The wood shook but held firm, betraying me with its silence. And then, as if in response, a low growl reverberated from the shadowy outline at the corridor's end. It crept closer, crawling from the edges of my dwindling sinistra, dark shape that flickered like a dying flame. I pressed myself against the wall, desperate to become one with the shadows. "Hey! You should have left well enough alone, a voice rasped from the depths of the darkness, and suddenly the room felt smaller, hotter, as if all the air had been sucked out. We know your secrets that I don't have any secrets. I retorted, though the tremor in my voice belied my insistence. It felt ridiculous, like throwing a pebble into an ocean, my defiance swallowed whole. The figure cracked a chilling laugh, a sound that scraped against my nerves, so close now that I could almost see its former robed silhouette, glistening with the sheen of darkness, like a raw wound. Everyone has secrets. Yours are screaming. Listen. And then I heard a cacophony of whispers that swirled around me, a nightmarish chorus composed of the stories I had just unearthed. The old woman, the girl in the woods, each voice wove in and out, almost melodic, a twisted lullaby urging me to let go, to succumb to the terror closing in from all sides. I grasped my phone, the faint glow seeming like a flickering firefly in a storm. I activated the camera, front-facing, and angled it towards the doorway, seeking solace in the artificial light. For a moment, I felt empowered. I would confront whatever horror lurked behind that door. Perhaps I could catch it unawares, but as the camera captured the dim scene, my heart plummeted. I was not alone. A featureless face stared back, cracked and hollow, devoid of humanity. It bore those same glowing eyes I had heard about, two burning embers that pulsated in the dark, lurking just outside the reach of my frail light. The camera flickered, glitching momentarily, and when it stabilized, the figure's face leaned closer, inches away from the screen, a twisted grin that stretched impossibly wide, as if mocking my feeble courage. You've been invited to join the stories, you know, it hissed, an icy breath ghosting over my skin, paralyzing my thoughts. No, stay back. I screamed, stumbling back from the advancing dark. But my voice only seemed to invigorate it further. I turned, desperately searching for an exit, but the walls warped around me, reshaping my sanctuary into a nightmarish labyrinth of fear. Before I could think, I lunged for the window, desperately pulling towards the glass. Maybe I could escape. The glass was heavy, coated with layers of grime, resistant to my frantic tug. Outside, the night lay thick and desolate, urban shadows looming like ancient giants waiting to swallow me whole. As I pressed my forehead against the cool surface, panting, I caught a glimpse of something shifting in the corner of my eye, a movement that didn't belong in my world. The air crackled, flooded with tension, and suddenly the whispers escalated into a tumultuous roar. Then, just like that, silence enveloped me. I turned around slowly, a dread pooling in the pit of my stomach, heart thundering. A figure twisted into grotesque shapes now hovering near my door. Its glowing eyes had morphed into an otherworldly fire, threatening to consume the very essence of light. With a sickening lurch, the shadows reached for me, tendrils of darkness slicing through the air as I felt myself being pulled toward the earthly and unearthly horrors wrapped in whispers. I grappled with my own fear, struggling against the inevitable, but as the darkness enveloped my legs and sank upward, whispering promises of a haunted eternity, the world around me shifted again, and then, out of the stillness, a voice that was hauntingly familiar emerged from the darkness, chilling my soul to its core. Welcome back, dear friend. Suddenly, the space twisted again, the walls rippling like water. I was no longer in my apartment. The walls pulsed and breathed like a living entity. I was lost, swallowed by the very thing that had followed me home, forever tethered to the horrors that I had once brushed off as mere tales. And then, from a distance, I heard the faint echo of Giggle's laughter that twisted my spine, and with it, the darkness beckoned me deeper. What if the stories never truly ended? What if I was becoming part of the narrative? I could feel the pull, drawing me into the shadows, away from safety. I reached for the door, but it was no longer there. Only a gaping abyss awaited me. Breathing deeply, I stood at the precipice of that dark void, feeling its cold breath on my face, and that's when I noticed there were more eyes watching me from within the gloom, more secrets yearning to be told, ready to embrace me for eternity. I took a step forward, unable to resist their call, and then the light flickered one last time. A whisper echoed in my ear, "You will be the next story." Just as I was about to scream, the floor opened beneath me, plunging me into an endless night. I fell through the darkness, a phantom descending into an abyss of unknown terrors. Time stretched and warped around me, the sensation was both surreal and agonizingly real. My screams ripped through the void, swallowed by the silence that enveloped me. I couldn't tell if seconds or hours passed as I plummeted deeper, my stomach twisted in knots, the exhilarating dread mixing with a burgeoning hope that perhaps it was all a dream, but dreams have a way of intertwining with reality, and the familiar chill of the air was unmistakably tangible. Just as panic began to spike, I landed abruptly. The thud was jarring, knocking the breath from my lungs, but I couldn't linger in pain. Instinct seized control as I scrambled to my feet. I was abruptly aware of my surroundings, squinting into the dimness, straining to catch any flicker of light. Something flickered deeper within the darkness, instigating a primal urge to either run or hide. "Where are you?" I whispered, the sound foreign and fragile amidst the heavy silence. The only answer came in the form of a soft rustle, like dry leaves skittering across stone. I moved cautiously, each step amplifying the dread that coiled within me like an unsettled serpent. As I advanced, the atmosphere thickened, coalescing into a tangible entity. Shadows crowded, brushing against my skin, whispering secrets that curled around my mind. "You seek them, don't you?" The echoes purred, slithering through the air, igniting memories I thought were safely buried. Ethan, the boy from the urban legends, whose laughter echoed through the corridors of my mind, now twisted into a haunting plea for salvation. "Ethan!" I called out, my voice quaking. In response, the shadows thickened. "No. Not him," I breathed, but the shadows only grew bolder, converging like a shroud around me. My heart raced, flying against desperation. Perhaps freedom existed beyond this nightmare, but to find it, my choices were running thin. A flicker of light appeared, brushing against the edges of the darkness, urging me to approach. I hastened towards it, my body fueled by hope but my instincts screaming to retreat. Within the glow, I saw twisted reflections of myself, every regret, every fear played out on the distorted surface as if the light had become a mirror to torment my soul. Figures writhed past me, their hollow, breathless faces a cacophony of panic mirroring my own. "Come and play," they whispered, voices echoing like a broken music box, dreadfully serenading my senses into submission. A guttural voice pierced through the whispers, "Leave your humanity behind, and join the tales forever." I recoiled, feelings of despair washing over me as I lost track of which reality was mine. With one desperate whimper, I dashed towards the flickering beacon, each frantic step laden with the weight of despair. Suddenly, the glowing presence swirled violently, smothering me in a whirlwind of darkness, a maelstrom of haunting laughter, sharp and piercing. It enveloped me, dragging me towards a Beata pulsing rhythm that resonated from the heart of the abyss. Then the whispers merged, forming a single name that cut through the chaos, intoxicating and sinister. Lila. My breath hitched, recalling the doomed girl from the shared legends, the one who had vanished beneath the same stars I had once gazed upon. A tremor of recognition coursed through me. The remnants of her laughter lingered in the air, yet it was laced with desperation as I fought against a surge of panic. I didn't want to surrender to Thesa. Sold-out entrance to a theater of lost souls. Below, I saw a massive web woven from the shadows themselves, a glittering trap waiting to ensnare those who dared to linger too long, pulsating with the essence of those who had slipped free of the living. My heart raced. None who ventured close returned unscathed. That I turned to run, but the shadows erupted with gleeful screeches, grasping at my ankles with sensation aplenty, coils of despair trying to draw me into their fold. Their cries twisted into the echo of Lila's fate, dragging memories into my core. I could almost see her transparent figure, eyes wide with terror, reaching imperceptibly towards me, a warning engraved with palpable fear, "Don't let them take you." She choked out, a ghost tethered to the liminal space between nightmares and oblivion. Then her voice faded, replaced by the thrumming of something that felt primal, a chant echoing in a tongue I could not comprehend, vibrant with life, yet haunting with an undertone of inevitability. And then I felt it, the unmistakable grip of cold hands upon my throat, squeezing with an unnerving familiarity. I was cornered, consciousness spiraling as I fought against the shadows holding tight that I in brutal clarity. An unseen force propelled me back towards the flickera portal that pulsed eagerly with the promise of escape. As I inched closer, I caught sight of a burning spark at its center. A pair of fiery eyes locked on mine, and they swiftly morphed into Lilith's gaze. Time slowed, winding tighter, and every heartbeat whispered its final warning. There's no leaving, but you can become part of the story, she murmurs, her voice slipping through the air like a fading whisper. My hand shot out to break the barrier of agonizing entwine, but just before I crossed the threshold, a sinister reality cracked through the veil. What emerged from the shadows was something far more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. A faint smirk pulling across Lilith's lips was not welcoming but malevolent. As I teetered on the edge of the light and dark, an otherworldly howl erupted, shattering the silence, and then everything went black. The suffocating darkness swallowed me whole, visceral and alive. Abandoned by the flickering light, I was cast into a void where even breath felt like an offense against the silence. It pressed against my chest, pounding with the thudding echoes of my pulse. Weak and trembling, I struggled to comprehend the last moment, yet caught up in the horror of the now, I was utterly unmoored, adrift in a chilling abyss that pulsated like a living organism. I felt it before I saw Ida whisper against my ear, a moist breath that spilled sweetly yet foul upon my skin. Lila is waiting, the voice crooned, an unfurling tendril of pure malice that wrapped itself around my thoughts. Panic surged, morphing into a raw, instinctual fear. What had Lila called me into? What sinister game awaited? I opened my eyes, letting my vision adjust to the anemic gloom that surrounded me, the shadows now curling with purpose. They moved with sentience, writhing along the floor and walls, snaking their way onwards, always retreating yet beckoning. An endless whisper seemed to escape from their depths, enticing and taunting. Seek her, seek him, or become one of us. Lustrous, cerulean flashes erupted sporadically, illuminating figures woven into the darkness, grotesque and contorted. They remained just beyond the edge of my sight, flickering in and out of existence, and with each spark, I caught a glimpse of gnarled faces twisting in agony or unrestrained ecstasy. It felt as if they were desperate to draw me into their torment, unspeakable wails echoing from the very floor as if it throbbed with lost souls. Their suffering clawed at the edges of my sanity. Do you feel their pain? The voice cooed, a phantom whose identity swam just beyond my reach in the locked recesses of my mind. What will you sacrifice to save yourself? That question looped incessantly, the burden of choice swarming me. I staggered back, fighting the weight of their collective torment pressing against my chest. My thoughts spiraled back to Ethan's laughter, a sound that once filled my days with warmth. What had he lost? What had Lila betrayed in her malevolent wish to escape? I staggered forward, driven with a mix of desperation and determination. But then a low growl vibrated through the air, thick and primal. The shadows coiled tighter, their whispers turned vicious, spiraling into shrieks of hunger. They craved my fear, their insatiable appetite made me sick. Suddenly, the air shifted, the depth of the darkness expanding and contracting around me. I caught a glimpse of the horizon that flickered in discrepancies between light and shadow, a liminal space that throbbed with an ominous heartbeat. There came a sound akin to rustling feathers, and before me unfurled a monstrous silhouette, wings unfurling darkly against the parchment of the abyss. A creature emerged, grotesque and harrowing, a shadow formed from the depths of every haunting nightmare I had ever known. Its eyes, glowing like coals, bored into me, filled with ancient rage and unspeakable hunger. Come play, it growled, each word pressed against my chest like a vice, or be lost forever. Behind it, the shadows clawed and writhed, trapped souls swirling in a cyclone of despair. I stumbled backward, utterly overwhelmed, every inch of my body screamed at me to run, to escape, but direction was lost. The creature stepped closer, revealing jagged teeth basked in dripping twilight as it spread its twisted wings wide. Join us, enter the story, or I will feast on what remains of your soul. It spat with a jagged hiss, its eyes narrowing sensuously. I was torn between flight and the deadly allure of their proposal. If I were to enter, what horror would await me? But the idea of eternity lost to shadows clawed at my mind, desperate fingers that whispered not of pain but of the ecstasy of surrender. In that moment, the whispers grew deafening, a symphony of desperation and dread. Then came the voice again, insistent, causing my heart to race. Remember Ethan? His name echoed in my ears like a tolling bell, the final reminder of a life once lived. This fate standing in front of me, or merely an illusion? The burning questions ignited every muscle, every nerve in me. Would my choice be the key to breaking the cycle, or would I become part of their legends, just another tale woven into the darkness? Choose, the creature hissed, its breath a tempest, the shadows seeping through my skin and into my bones, pulling at my very essence. Join us, or be consumed by your own cowardice. That I in that instant, a surge of defiance coursed through me, a promise echoed through my memories. With every ounce of effort I could muster, I screamed, I will find you, Ethan. And lunged forward, determined to break the tether that bound me to that accursed place, but the shadows lunged too, faster than I could react, wrapping around me with a claimed possession, holding me tight. In that fleeting moment, my vision blurred, and the creature howled with exultation as everything around me twisted into chaotic oblivion. I felt myself spiral away, but before the darkness could consume me completely, I glimpsed a world beyond. A flicker of light, not far off, radiated warmth against the relentless cold. I had to reach it, I had to fight back, yet as I stretched my hand toward it, a laugh echoed rich and sinister. There's no escape, and then, a pulsea crack followed by the whisper of what felt like cold fingers wrapping around my throat once again as an unseen force dragged me back into the weeping shadows, and then, silence. The silence wrapped around me like a shroud, the cold tendrils squeezing my throat and constricting any sound from escaping. My heart thudded violently, each beat resonating through the void that surrounded me, a solitary drumbeat heralding the end of my sanity. With every moment, the darkness thickened, pulsing as if it were a living entity, eager to consume any fragments of hope or resistance I harbored, but then came the whispers, in a cacophony of voices, echoing within the depths of my mind. Ethan, Ethan, they called, stretching the syllables into haunting wails. I felt suffocated, as if they were clawing at the walls of my psyche, insisting on dragging me deeper into their despair. Memories of laughter, sunshine, and Ethan's gentle embrace flickered like an old film, plagued by static until it bled into warped images of torment and loss. Suddenly, the world around me shifted again, fracturing like glass under pressure. One moment, I was lost in the suffocating fog of shadows, the next, I found myself standing on the edge of a familiar Placia Park where Ethan and I had spent countless evenings. The air felt damp and heavy, the sky hung low and oppressive, strange clouds twisting into ominous shapes overhead. With a jolt, I realized I was not alone. Shadows flickered beyond my peripheral vision, darting like ephemeral creatures between trees, always a breath away from visibility yet never revealing themselves. Panic clawed at my insides. I could feel their hunger, a gnawing, insatiable need that reeked of decay and despair. The vibrant laughter of children echoed faintly, warped by fear, tainted with the sorrow of what was lost, of what should never have slipped from my grasp. Lila, I called out hesitantly, breaking the suffocating silence, my voice cracking under the weight of dread. The air thickened, twisting around my shout, mocking my attempt to summon her. I could feel her presence, lingering just out of sight, a ghost tethered to my memories, her essence woven through the very fabric of nightmares that enveloped this place. Help me, I whispered, the words tasting of ash, an invocation that felt futile. I took careful steps forward, drawn to the fading remnants of laughter that echoed through the trees, desperate to find the truth, to face whatever horror she had crafted. As I neared the heart of the park, the darkness pressed in tighter, the shadows elongating aggressively, and whispers crescendoed into screams me name, mingling with the mockery of those twisted figures. They beckoned me closer, their mouths gaping open in silent screams as they reached for me, fingers like cracked branches swirling out of the void. Desperation rooted itself deeper within me, for I could not let their desperation quell mine. Then I saw her, a flickering outline standing beneath the ancient oak where Ethan and I used to carve our dreams into the bark. Lila's form wavered, caught between two worlds. Her eyes glowed an unsettling hue, empty yet filled with a dread mystery. You shouldn't have come here, she warned, her voice flat, devoid of warmth, as she extended a hand that trembled, a pulse of both longing and warning. They know. Before I could press forward, a sickening roar erupted from the depths of darkness, shattering the fragile semblance of safety I clung to. Shadows twisted and writhed, spilling from the corners like an avalanche of despair, rushing to engulf me. Lila's face contorted, an anguished plea erupting from her lips as her outline flickered, shimmering toward clarity and into nothingness. Join us. She screamed, a haunting echo of a choice I never made. I recoiled, the terror making my bones ache, as the creature's gargantuan form broke through the veil, the stench of decay pooling in the air. It surged towards me, its impossibly wide maw agape, teeth glistening with the remnants of lost souls. Your sacrifice is but a flicker away, it taunted, savage delight threading through its growl. Embrace the darkness, Lila waits at your door. For an unbearable moment, my vision blurred, images splintering into fragments. I could see Ethan's laughter swirl like smoke in the recesses of my mind, fading until it merged with Lilith's desperate cry for mercy. I felt threads of my identity unraveling, the darkness tugging with glee, eager to claim everything I was, the ache of my heart pulling towards oblivion. Then it happened. A cold wind swept through, bearing the edges of my grounded reality, hinting at something waiting behind the veil. I felt my feet leave the ground, a pull that yanked me upwards, swathed in a web that choked and tightened around my being. As I soared into the abyss, Lao's voice echoed from somewhere just ahead, impossibly clear and painfully close. You'll never find him, Lila. And just like that, time folded into itself, the expanse opened wide, a yawning mouth of fate ready to swallow me whole. I fell, heart racing, into the embrace of shadows, spiraling downward as the night thundered with the lamentations of those forever lost. And then the world went blank, darkness swallowing me like a scream lost in space. But just as I thought all was lost, an icy whisper brushed my ear, low and sweet. Welcome home. Before I could dive into the void, a chilling realization struck the ground beneath me. I wasn't sure whether I was falling in or out, but the choice, a cruel twist of fate, was one I had yet to make. And the shadows, ravenous and seductive, lingered, watching, waiting. I tumbled through the darkness, weightless yet surrounded by an overwhelming presence, as if the void itself had come alive to consume me. My thoughts turned to flashes of terror interspersed with memories of Ethan and Lila, haunting duet of sorrow and longing that blurred my grasp on reality. As I surrendered to the unknown, a bone-chilling grip seized my ankle, jerking me deeper into the abyss. Suddenly, the sensation of falling stopped, replaced by a disorienting thud that reverberated through my bones. The air shifted, rancid and thick, carrying the lingering essence of despair. I landed, not with a crash, but as if I sank into deep, viscous liquid that clung to me, suffocating and dragging me down. That I was in a cavernous chamber, dimly lit by a spectral glow. The walls glistened, dew-ridden and slick, pulsating as if they were breathing in unison with my ragged breaths. Stalactites hung like jagged teeth, and a cacophony of whispers surged from every corner, resonating with a chilling familiarity. Here, the darkness thrived, wrapped around the echoes of forgotten lives, feeding on their anguish. Ethan, I whispered. My voice resonated hollowly, swallowed whole by the dampness. The whispers grew louder, every syllable entwining with my name, molding my despair into something more potent, more insidious. You should have listened, Lila. You should have left it all behind. I pressed forward, each step graffitied with the spectral mirages of those lost to the shadows. Figure after figure floated by, their faces contorted with pain, mouth agape as if caught in eternal screams, their hollow stares pleading, accusing. I shivered, the dampness wrapping around my limbs, gluing me to the ground with dread. In a frantic search for familiarity, I darted toward the scant light that struggled against the all-consuming darkness. As I approached, shadows peeled away, revealing a disheveled tapestry of memories stitched with despair. I recoiled, recognizing the stories woven there, days spent laughing in the park, spent hours ethereally bright, now turned cold and lifeless. Darkness pooled at my feet, manifesting into murky figures that writhed and twisted in agony. They clawed toward me, their palms slapping against the ground, attempting to drag me into their spiral dance of horror. I squeezed my eyes shut against the onslaught of faces, whispers amplifying into a chaotic symphony of despair that threatened to break my resolve. Find him, Lila, a voice cooed, sweet yet sinister. Find what you lost, he's waiting for you. Suddenly, a burst of chilling winds engulfed the chamber, sweeping the memories away like autumn leaves in a tempest. I opened my eyes, and the spectral glow dimmed, plunging me into near darkness once more. In that murky stillness, I heard a chorus of moans echoing from deeper within the caverns of the forgotten, clawing their way back into existence. Help us, they chorused, frantic. I turned to flee, but the atmosphere thickened, squeezing my lungs as the shadows coalesced into an unholy mass. My pulse raced, and I was drawn back to the irrefutable urge to find Lila, the fading vestiges of her essence intertwined with my very being. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, indistinct yet achingly familiar. Ethan stepped out, his eyes dull and sunken, yet a haunting semblance of warmth still flickered behind them. "Lila," he murmured, his voice crackling like dried leaves. "You should have stayed away, this isn't salvation. It's a trap." My heart twisted, hope and horror battling within me as I stretched out my hand, craving connection, but shadows wrapped around his figure and pulled him back into the darkness. I screamed, the sound piercing the thick stillness until it crescendoed into desperate fervor, "Come back, Ethan!" The laughter returned, an echo from the mists, taunting, beckoning, "Join us. Find the truth, Lila." A blinding flash ripped through the cavern, illuminating grotesque faces twisted in torment, pouring from the walls like liquid regret. They lunged toward me, mouths agape, a tide of desperation, threatening to drown me in their despair. Just then, the dance floor of nightmares shook, and the ground beneath me quaked violently. Everything swirled, shadows and figures spiraling into chaos, and in that moment, I realized the truth: time wasn't linear here, it was as tortured and fragmented as the souls caught within. "Lila, listen." Ethan's voice broke through the chaos like a tether. I turned to him, desperately hoping to cling to something real, something that anchored me against the tide of dread, but before I could reach him, the cavern tore open beneath my feet, a chasm unraveling with a deafening roar. As I plummeted once again into an expansive nothingness, I caught a final glimpse of Ethan's face, fusing with effigies of countless others, disjointed, anguished, and endlessly circling within the dark. "Don't let them take you." His voice faded into a low whisper, and I fell through the void, feeling the cold fingers of despair pulling at me from all sides, all faces whispering, urging, "Welcome home." Before I could even comprehend my fate, a blinding light erupted, flooding my senses, and I landed with a sickening jolt in an unrecognizable realm filled with shifting shadows and flickering entities. That I was no longer simply lost, I was trapped, ensnared in their horrific web of unending revelations and torment. And as I shrank back, fear clawing at my throat, an all too familiar voice echoed from the abyss, "This time, there is no escape, Lila." With that, the walls began to close in, darkness alive and breathing as it enveloped me once more, drawing together to form something malevolent, something that hungered for release. And I realized, with a dawning horror, that something was waiting for me, yearning to claim my very essence. The darkness pulsed with a sinister rhythm, each throb reverberating through my bones as the malevolent entity coalesced, taking form. I was paralyzed, pinned in an inky web of fear as the specter began to emerge from the suffocating gloom, its outlines splintering and fraying like the edges of a frayed tapestry. "Lila," it whispered, voice dripping with malice, yet threaded with an unholy familiarity that made my heart race. "I've missed you." The shadows flickered, and I realized I was surrounded not just by the entity, but by a whirlwind of tortured souls, their hollow eyes watching me, their mouths moved in unison, and the whispering chorus surged to a fevered pitch. "We are legion," they chanted, their voices echoing in a dissonant harmony. "Embrace us, join us." I stumbled back, fear clawing at the edges of my mind, but I could not escape the pull, the suffocating grip of the nightmare that encased me. The light was fading again, swallowed by pitch black, and I was alone with the Antitia grotesque visage with features that morphed and melded, almost resembling Ethan's, twisted beyond recognition. "It's beautiful here, isn't it?" it cooed, lips curving in a mocking semblance of a smile. "Your friends are here, too, the ones you couldn't save." My throat tightened as images flooded my thoughts. Ethan, Lila, moments of our lives intertwined like threads in a tapestry, now fraying and fading. I caught glimpses of their faces, smiles that had turned to anguish, echoes of laughter lost in the torment of this shadowed realm. "No. This isn't real," I shouted, hoping to shatter this illusion, but the shadows just intensified, tightening around me like a noose. "Isn't it?" The entity leaned closer, the stench of decay wafting over me. "You've craved this, yearning to belong, to be part of something greater than yourself. All you had to do was surrender." My mind raced as I gasped, drawing in the fetid air thick with despair. I needed to fight back, but every ounce of strength was drained. A vision struck me, Ethan's face etched in horror as he cried out into despair. "Don't fall for it, Lila. They want you as one of their own." But the haunting smiles of the lost surrounded me, pulling me deeper into their embrace. How could I resist? Their every lament resonated with my fractured soul, tempting me with promises of belonging, of peace. "We can ease your pain," they whispered, their hands reaching, ghostly fingers brushing against my skin with a chilling touch. No. I spat, pushing against their grasp. But with each protest, I felt gravity shift, dragging me closer to the melancholic tide. They began to chant, a low, rhythmic drone seeping into my consciousness, resonating with the very depths of my grief and regret. "You'll be one of us, forever lost, forever knowing." A flicker of defiance sparked inside me, but it was quickly snuffed out by the intensity of their collective anguish. In their cries, I heard Ethan's voice merging with theirs, "Help us, Lila." And then, a moment of clarity. I blinked, only darkness surrounded me, swirling visions that felt all too real. "I won't lose myself," I shouted, desperation and anger coursing through my veins. Suddenly, the chains of shadow fell from my limbs, and I surged forward, clawing at the darkness itself. My heart raced as I felt my way through the weight of despair, each breath a battle against their insidious influence. I had to escape, but just as I turned to flee, the ground began to tremble violently beneath me, fissures splitting open in the cavern floor, revealing a relentless void that pulsed with vibrant colors of sorrow. The entity roared, its form expanding, darkened tendrils lashing out to ensnare me once more. "Flee. Where will you go?" It bellowed, its voice resonating with undeniable anger. "You will always come back to us. You belong in the darkness." Sweat dripped from my brow as I sprinted, the whispers screeching in rage as they clawed at my heels, the shadows clawing at my resolve, drawing me back into their unrelenting embrace. I caught a glimpse of the chasm opening, disparate faces, each one a fragment of loss, a jigsaw of heartache swallowed in the abyss. I leapt forward, throwing myself toward the faintest glimmer of light I could see in the distance, a memory of hope flickering like a candle in a storm. I could almost touch it, feel its warmth, when the floor erupted beneath me. I slipped and fell, feeling the pull of infinite despair dragging me toward the dark. "Join us, Lila," they shrieked, a tumultuous wave of voices swelling in crescendo, and as I plunged into the chasm, darkness lunged to embrace me like a long-lost lover. The last echo of their laughter rang in my ears, mixing with Ethan's desperate cry, "Don't let it take you," and then came the silence, a startling vacuum that consumed everything. I hung in the dark, weightless, alone until a horrifying realization dawned, a whisper so sinister it sent ice coursing through my veins. "You've brought me another plaything," came a voice from nowhere, but everywhere, creeping with a dangerous familiarity. "Welcome home, Lila." And in that moment of dreadful awareness, I felt fingers reach out from the void, cold and unyielding, grasping my heart, tightening their grip, ready to claim my essence as their own. The darkness was suffocating, a shroud of claustrophobia wrapping around me like a funeral veil. I felt weightless, floating in the emptiness, suspended between fear and despair. The voice was back, reverberating through the void as though it had morphed the very darkness itself into a living entity intent on tormenting me. "Every heartbeat brings another soul closer to me, you know." The voice purred, smooth and hypnotic, a sonorous echo that seemed to resonate from all directions, pressing heavily upon my mind. "You've been so brave, Lila, but the truth is this: fear feeds me, and you are a lavish banquet waiting to be devoured." I couldn't scream. I couldn't even move. I was paralyzed by a terror so profound, it wrapped around my throat like a noose. What was this place? What had happened to my escape? My eyes darted wildly in the darkness, searching for any sign of a return to the world of the living. But all I found was an expanse of shadow, infested with whispers that clawed at my sanity. "You don't need to be afraid," the voice continued, soothing yet insidious. "We can be together forever in this realm of exquisite anguish. You and I were bound now." And just when I thought all hope was lost, a flicker of light pierced through the darkness, a beacon of something real. I grasped at it desperately, but it flickered and waned, a cruel mirage teasing me with the promise of escape. I could hear sounds beneath the stillness, faint cries that merged with the oppressive silence, bringing the tumultuous memories of Ethan flooding back. My heart ached, torn between the devastating hope of seeing him again and the undeniable sensation that I was being drawn deeper into oblivion. Ethan. I cried into the void, my voice lost to the eerie stillness. The darkness replied with a hollow laugh, a monstrous sound that twisted my stomach. He cannot save you now. He belongs to me as well. His essence is forever entwined with mine. With each pulse of the darkness, I felt the shadows reach for me, slithering closer, intent on dragging me back into their depths. Stay. They beckoned, seductive and commanding. Stay with us, Lila. Surrender to the sweet embrace of despair. The more I fought, the more oppressive their grip became. I caught a glimpse of skeletal hands clawing through the dark, faces frozen in agony, their hollow eyes pleading, lost souls begging for release but finding none. Panic surged through me, pushing me forward once more. Ethan. I screamed louder, desperation igniting a flicker of strength. If you can hear me, please, I need you. But the shadows quickened, reacting to my cries, tightening their grasp as though angered by my defiance. You will not summon him. You do not get to escape. The darkness wavered, pulling, dragging at my memories, herding them into a relentless torrent that surged around me, drowning out my thoughts. I couldn't distinguish between reality and this tormenting nightmare. The atmosphere grew heavier, dark tendrils wrapping around my ankles like chains, bitter whispers filling my ears. You've already chosen this, Lila, the voice taunted, slithering through my mind, burrowing into my thoughts. You belong to the abyss. A sharp crack split through the fabric of the dark, and in that brief instant, I saw a vision of Ethan, his face fusing into my consciousness, his eyes wide with fear, desperation etched in each feature. A shimmer of light caught my eye, brighter this time, beckoning from the edges of despair. But just as quickly, that flicker of hope dimmed, swallowed whole by the impenetrable nightmare. Suddenly, I felt a searing pain radiate from my chest, as if a cold claw had pierced my heart. I gasped, the shock of it racking my body as the entity howled in delight, knowing it had pierced my very essence. Ah, sweet surrender! It screeched in twisted jubilation. You'll join the legions of lost souls, and he will be next. You'll see him again, Lila, just not how you might wish. That I felt myself being pulled toward the eye of the storm, the churning black maw of despair opening wider, ready to consume me whole. My heart raced in a frenzy, pounding against my chest as I twisted against the shadows tethering me. A scream clawed its way up my throat, not just for Ethan, but for myself, for the essence of my very soul. As the void expanded, the faces of those lost materialized before me. They reached out, mouths contorting in agony as if begging me to remember, pleading for my strength, desperately seeking an ally in their suffering. But the entity roared, an unholy sound that shook the very fabric of my being. They cannot help you now. I was on the brink of being devoured when I heard Ethan's voice again, softer this time, breaking through the chaos, clearer than before. Find me, Lila. You're not alone. I'll always find you. The shadows recoiled slightly at the strength of our bond, and in that moment, I snatched at the flickering light, turning my focus inward. I won't give in. I shouted, the determination surging through me. But just as I lunged toward the light, the darkness lunged back with a vengeance, seemingly preparing to strike a devastating blow that aimed to obliterate both my will and my heart. The last thing I saw was the shadowed mass barreling towards me, darkness consuming the light and pulling me straight into its fracturing depths, where the cries of lost souls crescendoed around me in a terrified symphony. And then, there was nothing. As the silence reigned once again, I felt the suffocating presence wrap around my throat, its voice a chilling whisper that echoed in the recesses of my mind. You're mine now, Lila, and so is everyone you love. The crushing darkness fell away, and I found myself gasping in a cold sweat, blinking against the flickering bulb overhead. The room around me, once adorned with photos of happier days, had mutated into a twisted grave of memories. The peeling wallpaper peeled back like dead skin, revealing darkened streaks that resembled the traces of spider silk glistening with malice in the dim light. The air hung thick with sorrow, a palpable grief that twisted like smoke and wrapped around my throat, pressuring each breath I inhaled. Heart pounding, I sat up. What had just happened? Had I been dreaming, or had I truly descended into some malevolent realm? I grasped at the sheet covering me, my fingers trembling as fragments of my dark encounter rushed through my mind. Shadowy figures, anguished faces, and that disembodied voice, equally alluring and repulsive. Find me, Lila, Ethan's voice echoed in my head, pulling at the tether of my heart like an anchor. I felt the surge of longing and despair coalesce into a singular purpose. I had to extract him, to command the shadows to release him from their clutches. But what if he was another victim, just a name, whispering endlessly through the void? No, I murmured to myself, determined to dispel the encroaching dread. I won't succumb. I slid off my bed, my feet meeting the icy wooden floor, a shriek of old houses echoing in protest as I stood. The realization struck me: Ethan's disappearance was more than an accident. I had stumbled upon something ancient and terrible, nourished by fear. And now, it hungered for more. I stepped toward the window and pulled back the frayed curtains. A thick blanket of fog rolled through the desolate street outside, cloaking the world in an unsettling hush. Not a sound broke the heavy silence, save for the rustling of leaves whispering warnings I couldn't decipher. Determined, I picked up my phone. I must have been out for at least a few hours, there was no telling how far he had wandered. As I scanned through my contacts, dread tightened like a vice around my chest. My fingers hesitated over Ethan's name. I need to talk to him, to tell him about the voice and the darkness, but would it even matter? Was he still out there, or had he, too, succumbed to the shadows? I texted him, my heart fluttering nervously in my chest. Find me, I sent, my fingers trembling against the glass screen. As soon as I pressed send, an ominous chill swept through the room, wrapping around me like a shroud. Suddenly, my phone buzzed and I flinched, heart racing with hope. His name flashed across the screen, the familiar blue of his message saturating my senses. Where are you? It read. An insistent urgency coursed through me as I began to respond. But just as I began to type, the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway, heavy and unyielding. I froze. The shadows in the corners of my room writhed like living things, dark tendrils stretching toward me in silent anticipation. I held my breath, ears straining against the thick silence. Lila. A voice came, low and cautious. Not Ethan's, but eerily familiar. It was my mother. Are you in there? I heard you screaming. Fear crept through me, spiraling like mist into my veins. My mother's presence should have brought comfort, yet it felt tainted. I knew that my past had lashed itself to her somehow, had stained the love I once felt with the sickening theories I had uncovered concerning our family. The whispers in the dark had been too cruel to ignore. Mom. Fine, I called hesitantly, gauging my voice, trying to mask the quiver of panic. Just a bad dream. Open the door, Lila, she commanded, her voice foreboding, laden with an urgency that sent chills skittering down my spine. I need to talk to you. Against my will, my footsteps carried me closer to the door. I peered through the peephole, and my blood ran cold. The corridor was bathed in darkness, tendrils of fog curling along the edges as though the essence from my nightmare had seeped seamlessly into reality. I stepped back, heart pounding wildly. My card of logic was progressively weakening. My mother's face, usually a sanctuary, now seemed distorted, like a figure lost within the void. The footsteps grew louder, and I felt a horrible uncertainty wash over me. Lila, she repeated, her voice even lower now, a growl that turned my blood to ice. You have to let me in. They're coming for you. Who? I wanted to scream. Who are they? But dread sealed my mouth shut, pushing me into a decision that would rival my eternal torment. I felt the grip of an unseen hand clasp around the back of my neck, a surge of terror mixing with despair as the shadows outside my door twisted, forming dark figures that writhed with hungry intent. Open it, they whispered, their voices a dreadful mingling of anguish and desire, promising a horrific truth in exchange for my compliance. I stood frozen, pulse racing, mind racing. I had no choice. If I opened that door, what awaited Muhat truly lay behind it might fracture the already tenuous boundary distinguishing my beloved from the shadows seeking to devour the life I held dear. With a trembling hand, I reached for the doorknob, ready to confront the unknown, but an agonizing scream, raw and piercing, erupted from the hallway, sending shockwaves of dread surging through my very core. Lila. It was Ethan's voice, echoing with terror, echoing through the fabric of the dark, and that scream was everything twisted and wrong, ripping across the silence with a finality I knew I could not ignore. My heart plummeted as I threw the door open, bracing myself against the shadows retreating from the threshold. What spilled into the night, the true horror waiting on the other side, was far worse than I could ever imagine. The corridor was suffocated with darkness, the once familiar walls stretching and bending, becoming conduits for malevolent whispers that crawled beneath my skin. The moment I opened the door, that icy terror encapsulated me entirely, like a fog that sought to rouse buried memories. My eyes darted down both ends of the hall, searching for Ethan, for anything out of place. The world felt estranged, like the aftermath of a nightmare where reality was twisted beyond recognition, and then I saw her. At the end of the corridor stood my mother, her form shrouded in shadows, face illuminated by flickering bulbs that washed over us in eerie strokes. I blinked hard, struggling against the choking haze. The woman I loved seemed a ghostly reflection, a figure lost between worlds. Her face was rigid, the time-old worry morphing into something sharper, darker. "Lila, listen to me," she rasped, voice taut like a strung bow. "You cannot trust him. You can't let them in." The shadows behind her widened, curling like greedy fingers licking the edges of reality. My heart thumped painfully in response, echoing Ethan's terrified plea moments before the far-off shriek that still reverberated in the marrow of my bones. "Mom, where's Ethan?" I blurted, surrendering to panic, inching closer. "What's happening? I can hear him." My mother shook her head vehemently, the motion sending dark tendrils spinning from her form, coiling ominously. "It's not him. You don't understand. He's part of it now. They're luring you in a trap made from your fears." "Mom, stop. You're scaring me." I wanted to retreat, but the shadows whispered sweetly behind me, coaxing me to stay, to embrace their darkness. The dichotomy between mother and shadow twisted my thoughts into a nearly unbearable tension. "What do you mean, stay away from him?" she shrieked, panic slicing through her guise of authority. "He's lost. You're stronger than this, Lila. You can fight." The words were familiar, they unlocked a flicker of a memory of times when she had taught me to stand firm against the world, against fear. Yet now, they tasted bitter and confounding. Without warning, she thrust a hand forward, and I felt an instant surge of energy burst through the air, a vivid glow clashing against the darkness wrapping me tighter by the minute. "You need to trust me. Please." In that moment, a flicker caught my peripheral vision, a shape moving behind her, approaching rapidly through the encroaching fog. The figure was indistinct at first, but as it grew closer, an impossible recognition surged through me. "Ethan. Lila." His voice broke through the silence, clear yet laced with a haunting echo. He rushed toward me, desperation etched across his face, but then he stopped. Confusion crossed his features. There was something wrong, something lost in the hollowness behind his stare. I wanted to run into his arms, but fear held me back. A voice deep within whispered that this was not him, that something had claimed his essence in the shadows. He was a puppet now, strings pulled by unseen forces. "I'm here. You need to join me." He reached out, fingers trembling, and just like that, the warmth I had always known felt twisted, a lure wrapped in a darkness that yearned to devour. No. I shouted, fervently shaking my head. "You're not him. It's a trick." I was caught between two haunting forces, my mother, endlessly pleading to save me from this naive trap, and Ethan, or whatever he had become, beckoning me with a promise of salvation. The shadows stirred in response, creeping down the corridor, curling around my ankles, whispering promises of clarity and eternity. "He belongs to us. Join him, Lila. You were always meant to be one of us." In that instant, the truth shattered like glass underfoot, an icy realization cutting through my core. Ethan was not the only one lost. I had been dancing on the ledge of despair, tethered to the shadows, and now they sought my very soul. I took a step back, a battle of willpower fueling my resolve. My mother was right, I had to make a choice not just for myself, but for him. No. I choose my own fate. I screamed into the enveloping darkness, and suddenly, everything shattered around me. The corridor wrenched apart, screams swirling like a cyclone as if the very walls weeping for salvation before collapsing into a singular void. The souls those whom the shadows had claimed swirled around me, echoes of torment rising in a terrifying crescendo. Lila. Ethan's voice melded with those anguished cries, calling me as if he were both there and nowhere. The shadows tried to hold me down, but I ran. I ran with whatever strength flickered within me, pushing against the tide of despair as every heartbeat surged with defiance. As the corridor collapsed behind me, a blinding light exploded ahead. With one final leap, I propelled myself toward it, shouts of both my mother and Ethan fading into hollow echoes. Tumultuous energy enveloped me, spinning into chaos, and then silence. I found myself back in my apartment, breathless and trembling. The walls were pristine, untouched by memory. Relief flooded my veins, yet something felt fundamentally wrong. The echo of screams once shrill softened, replaced by a heavy stillness, like a sigh of a long-held breath. I looked to my phone. No notifications. No signs of Ethan or my mother. The world felt off-kilter, the uneasy quiet beckoned memory, whispers brushing the edges of my reality. Then the darkness tugged at my consciousness, a familiar grip that felt both foreign and merciless. Then I saw its reflection in the mirror. Not my own. Ethan's face stared back, his eyes wide and hollow. The beautiful smile that once filled me with warmth now twisted into a chilling grin that sent a tremor through my core. "They're waiting for you, Lila," he whispered, voice that sent a raw knife through my heart. "Welcome home." And before I could scream, a sudden darkness swallowed me whole, an inferno of despair gleefully consuming my essence, pulling me back into the darkness where the stories continue, waiting for their next unwitting victim.